Richard Coleman was the kind of man people in his community admired. A successful businessman, a devoted father of 5, and a loving husband to his high school sweetheart, Diana. He owned several stores that sold school bags across major U.S. cities, a chain of boutique hotels, and was building lavish mansions in Miami, Dallas, and Los Angeles. On the surface, Richard embodied the American dream. But behind the polished suits, expensive watches, and charitable donations to local schools, there were whispers. How could a man who sold school bags and hotel rooms afford private jets, fleets of exotic cars, and multi-million-dollar real estate? Friends dismissed the rumors. Richard is just a genius businessman, they'd say. But envy breeds suspicion. For years, Diana Coleman had lived in the glow of what seemed like a perfect life. Richard, her husband, was not just a provider, but a man admired by the community. He had built a business empire out of selling school bags, expanded into hotels, and was investing in real estate across the United States. To friends, they were the family everyone envied. 5 beautiful children, a mansion under construction, vacations overseas, and a husband who seemed endlessly ambitious. But Diana noticed things others couldn't. It started with the trips. Richard was gone more often, sometimes for days, sometimes just a night, always with vague explanations about business expansions in places that didn't quite make sense. He came back with stacks of cash, foreign bills tucked into his wallet, gifts for the children, and sometimes a look in his eyes she couldn't place. He was distant, distracted, always with his phone or locked away in his study late at night. One evening, as she was cleaning, Diana opened one of his drawers. Inside were several passports, each with Richard's picture but under different names. Alongside them, wads of money and currency she didn't recognize, and small glass vials filled with a powder she dared not touch. Her stomach turned cold. She wanted to confront him, but every time she looked at their children's smiling faces, she kept silent. Maybe I'm imagining it, she told herself. Maybe it's just business. Yet her doubts grew heavier. She began to watch him more closely, memorizing the way he avoided her questions, the way he shifted when she asked about the money. She knew something was wrong. The cracks in their perfect life had begun to show. On March 14th, 2018, Richard packed another suitcase. He kissed Diana on the cheek, hugged the children, and assured them he would be back in a few days. But there was no warmth in his words anymore. It felt like a performance. Diana stood by the window and watched the taxi pull away, a knot forming in her stomach. At JFK Airport, Richard walked with the calm air of a seasoned traveler. His designer suit, polished shoes, and confident stride made him blend seamlessly with businessmen on their way to meetings. But something was different this time. His body ached, his stomach tight, each step measured. He knew the risk he was taking. Hidden in his suitcase, beneath perfectly folded clothes, were tightly wrapped packages of cocaine. And inside his own body, dozens of drug pellets rested in his stomach, swallowed carefully that morning, each one a gamble with death if it ruptured. As he approached customs, an officer gestured for him to step aside. Random screening. Richard's pulse quickened, though his face remained calm. He had rehearsed this moment in his mind, but the odds were not in his favor. "Please open your luggage, sir." The officer unzipped the suitcase, moving aside layers of clothes. His hand paused, then reached deeper. When the first brick-shaped package appeared, silence fell heavily in the room. Another was pulled out, and then another. Richard tried to explain, to protest, but his words stumbled. The officer's expression hardened. Within minutes, Richard was escorted to a private room, where agents ordered a medical scan. The images left no doubt. The businessman who owned hotels and mansions had swallowed drugs like a desperate courier. The news broke within hours. "Millionaire businessman arrested at JFK with cocaine," the headlines read. Neighbors who once admired him shook their heads in disbelief. His mugshot flashed across television screens, and reporters swarmed outside the Coleman mansion. Diana sat frozen in front of the television, tears streaming silently down her face. It was real. The suspicions she had carried in silence for so long now stared back at her in cold, undeniable truth. Her husband, the father of her children, was a drug smuggler. The empire they had built, the life they had lived, was crumbling before her eyes. And deep down, Diana knew this was only the beginning. The news shocked the nation. Headlines read, millionaire hotel owner arrested with drugs at JFK, community leader or kingpin. FBI agents and DEA officers launched a full-scale investigation into Richard's empire. What they uncovered was staggering. His school bag business was a front. His hotels laundered money. And his real fortune came from drug trafficking, smuggling cocaine from South America into the United States. Through phone taps, surveillance, and financial trails, investigators connected Richard to an international cartel operating under the guise of legitimate trade. His business trips were rendezvous with cartel bosses. His warehouses, masked as bag distribution centers, stored narcotics before they hit the streets. Shockingly, Richard wasn't just a participant. He was a key distributor, running one of the most sophisticated smuggling rings in the country. While agents built their case, Richard's family unraveled. Diana, blindsided, refused to believe the accusations. Her children crowded around, confused by their mother's pale face. She clutched her children as reporters camped outside their mansion. "Your father is innocent," she whispered to her youngest daughter, even as prosecutors released evidence of wire transfers, coded conversations, and photographs of Richard with known cartel leaders. Friends abandoned them. The community that once adored Richard now branded him a fraud. During interrogations, Richard shocked agents. He confessed not only to smuggling, but revealed that some of his closest friends and associates were involved too, men who attended his dinner parties, who had sat beside him at charity galas. The empire was bigger than anyone imagined. Even one of his trusted business partners, who ran a chain of private schools, was part of the operation, helping to conceal shipments through educational supplies. The facade was flawless until it crumbled. The courtroom was packed. Prosecutors painted Richard as a mastermind who hid behind his family and charities. His defense argued he was manipulated by dangerous men. But the evidence was overwhelming. Secret ledgers, offshore accounts, encrypted messages, and testimony from former cartel members. In the end, Richard Coleman was convicted of drug trafficking, money laundering, and racketeering, sentenced to life in federal prison without parole. The mansions were seized. The hotels were auctioned off. The family's wealth evaporated overnight. Diana filed for divorce, moving away to protect the children from the stigma. Richard sits behind bars, his empire reduced to ashes. Once admired as a role model, he is now a cautionary tale. His story is a haunting reminder. Not every success story is built on hard work. Some are built on secrets, lies, and a ticking time bomb of crime.